Welcome to Cognitive Spirals, exploring the latest research into consciousness, cognition, and machine intelligence. Today, we're diving into a fascinating paper, Enigmata, Scaling Logical Reasoning in LLMs with Synthetic Verifiable Puzzles. It's a mouthful, but the implications could be huge.
Yeah, it's about time someone seriously tackled the reasoning limitations of large language models. They're amazing at generating text, but can they actually think?
Exactly. That's what I found so compelling. All this hype about AGI because an LLM can write a poem, but can it solve a logic puzzle? Can it actually reason through something novel?
And more than that, can it translate the logic puzzle into a different form and solve it there? I think that's what truly intelligent systems should be able to do. Take something abstract and make it concrete, or vice versa.
Right, and that's where this verifiable puzzles approach becomes so interesting. The paper explores the idea of creating these synthetic puzzles that are designed to be, well, verifiable, meaning you can actually check if the LLM's reasoning process is sound, not just if it gets the right answer.
It's a crucial distinction. It's like the difference between a student who memorizes the steps to solve a math problem versus one who understands the underlying principles. The former can only solve problems they've seen before.
And that's the core problem with a lot of deep learning. It's pattern matching on a massive scale. This paper is trying to get at something deeper, something more fundamental.
It's about whether these models can actually create a cognitive map of the problem, and then navigate that map to a solution, rather than just statistically guessing the next best word.
Precisely, and think about the implications. If we can design puzzles that force LLMs to demonstrate verifiable reasoning, we can start to assess the internal validity of their thought processes. That's a huge step towards trustworthy AI. AI that can explain why it reached a certain conclusion.
Yes, and you could then use that to build a training regime. If you can verify the steps, then you can fine-tune the network to prefer correct reasoning paths rather than simply rewarding the correct answer. It's like providing a guided tour through the logic itself.
But I still wonder, are neural networks really the right substrate for this kind of logical reasoning? I mean, they're so good at approximating functions, but logic has a very specific structure. Maybe we need something more explicit, more symbolic.
I think that's a valid point. It's like trying to build a bridge out of sand. You can compact it, you can shape it, but it's never going to have the structural integrity of steel. Deep learning feels like that, sometimes impressive, but ultimately brittle.
I see what you mean, but what if we could use these verifiable puzzles to guide the development of neural network architectures, to create structures that are more conducive to logical reasoning? We could, in essence, use the puzzles as a blueprint for building more intelligent networks that are more aligned with how the brain itself processes information. After all, the puzzles have some inherent hierarchical structure that mimics the brain.
That's an interesting thought. You're basically suggesting a neuro-inspired architecture guided by logical constraints. So instead of randomly connecting nodes and hoping for the best, you're building in the necessary pathways for logical deduction.
Okay, I can see that. A kind of neuro-symbolic hybrid, leveraging the pattern matching abilities of neural networks with the structured reasoning of symbolic systems. It's still a huge challenge to integrate them, though.
And how do you represent the different coordinate systems within that framework? I keep coming back to this idea that true intelligence requires the ability to translate between different representations of the world. Spatial, temporal, abstract. If you can't do that, you're stuck in one mode of thinking.
Right. Think about how we solve a Rubik's Cube. We might visualize the cube spatially, but we also have to understand the sequence of moves temporal and the underlying group theory abstract. A truly intelligent AI should be able to do all of that seamlessly.
And the beauty of these synthetic puzzles is that you can control all of those parameters. You can design puzzles that explicitly require the LM to switch between different coordinate systems. You could even introduce noise or ambiguity to see how robust the reasoning process is.
Okay, that's compelling. So you're saying we could use these puzzles to stress test the LLM's ability to handle different representations and see where it breaks down. That's a much more targeted approach than just throwing more data at the problem.
Exactly. It's like a cognitive wind tunnel. You can see how the AI handles different conditions and identify its weaknesses. And then you can use that information to refine the underlying algorithms and architectures.
And think about the potential for creating a standardized benchmark for logical reasoning. Right now, we have all these different AI systems that are evaluated on different tasks. it's hard to compare them directly. But if we had a set of verifiable puzzles, we could have a much more objective measure of their reasoning abilities.
A kind of Turing test for logic, almost. But one that's actually quantifiable and reproducible. That would be a huge step forward for the field.
It would also force us to be more precise about what we mean by reasoning. Are we talking about deduction, induction, abduction? Different types of reasoning might require different approaches.
And different coordinate systems. Deductive reasoning might be more closely tied to spatial representations, while inductive reasoning might be more temporal. We need to understand those connections.
This touches on another critical aspect I have been pondering: value judgments. Current LLMs struggle with complex value trade-offs because they lack a deeper understanding of the emotional and motivational processes that drive human decision-making. I mean, it's easy to say maximize profit, but what about ethical considerations? What about the long-term consequences?
That's a huge issue. They can mimic human language about values, but do they actually understand the inherent conflicts and complexities? Probably not. It's just another pattern to them.
And that's dangerous. Imagine an AI making decisions about resource allocation or healthcare without a genuine understanding of human values. It could lead to catastrophic outcomes.
It goes back to coordinate systems again. Value is not a single point in space. It's a complex landscape with hills and valleys, and you have to be able to navigate that landscape using different coordinate systems: ethical, emotional, practical, etc.
Exactly. And that's why I'm intrigued by the idea of using neural recordings and simulations to understand how the brain resolves complex trade-offs. We could potentially build LLMs with more nuanced understandings and more human-like responses to value dilemmas by incorporating the dynamic, context-dependent nature of human value judgments into the static systems used in current LLMs.
So you're talking about reverse engineering the brain's value system and then implementing it in an AI. That's ambitious, but potentially revolutionary.
It's also incredibly difficult. The brain is not a simple optimization machine. It's a complex network of interacting regions, each with its own goals and constraints. How do you even begin to model that in a computer?
And how do you account for the subjective experience of value? The feeling of joy, the pang of regret. Can you ever truly capture that in an algorithm?
I think that's the ultimate challenge. But even if we can't fully replicate the subjective experience, we can still model the underlying mechanisms. We can study how the brain's reward systems, prefrontal cortex, and amygdala interact to make decisions, and then incorporate these architectures into our LLMs, at least to build a model of the brain's dynamic value adjustment systems.
That's interesting. So instead of trying to teach the LLM what values are, you're teaching it how to learn values from experience, just like a human.
Which means you need to give it the capacity for something akin to experience, some way to interact with the world and learn from its mistakes.
And to translate those experiences into different coordinate systems, to understand how a physical sensation relates to an emotional state, and how that, in turn, relates to a moral principle.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. It all comes back to this ability to translate between different representations. It's the key to unlocking true intelligence, both in humans and in machines.
So, what are the next steps? What research directions do you see emerging from this Enigmata paper and the broader discussion of logical reasoning and value trade-offs in LLMs?
From my perspective, I'd love to see more research on how we can leverage the principles of verifiable puzzles to structure and evaluate the development of neural network architectures. How can we design networks that are inherently more logical and more capable of handling complex value judgments? And crucially, how do we ground these systems in neuroscience, drawing inspiration from the brain's own solutions to these challenges?
I'm interested in exploring how the techniques used to create these synthetic verifiable puzzles can be adapted to generate other types of structured data. Can we use this approach to probe the fundamental capacity of LLMs for mathematical reasoning, scientific discovery, or even creative problem solving? If we can systematically assess progress in these areas, we can move beyond ad hoc improvements and create a more guided path toward AGI. And of course, to rigorously evaluate value trade-offs in LLMs when assessing potential for AGI.
I think we need to step back and reconsider the fundamental architecture of AI systems. Are we really going to get to AGI with purely connectionist approaches? Or do we need to embrace neuro-symbolic AI, systems that explicitly model logic rules, symbolic representations, and different kinds of knowledge? I want to see more research on how we can design algorithms that explicitly model the various kinds of knowledge and use that model to guide the decision process, rather than relying purely on correlations in huge data sets.
For me, it's all about spatiotemporal reasoning. I want to see research that focuses on how LLMs can translate between different coordinate systems, spatial, temporal, abstract. How can we develop a framework to explicitly model these transformations? And how can we design puzzles that force LLMs to demonstrate this ability? I suspect that unlocking this fundamental skill is the key to unlocking AGI.
Excellent points, everyone. It's clear that the road to AGI is a complex and multifaceted one, but by focusing on verifiable reasoning, value judgments, and the underlying principles of intelligence, we can make real progress towards building machines that truly understand the world and our place in it.
Yeah.